Hey everyone, it's Graslin. Welcome back. Well, not welcome back. You're probably new, unless you're one of the two people who watch my channel, in which case, welcome back, two people that watch my channel. If you're new here, I like to talk about random shit that I find interesting. So, yeah. In this video, I wanted to talk about this idea that every day is Judgment Day. So, what's really funny about morality is that actually, let me talk about a story first. So I was having an argument online with someone. Why would you have arguments online with someone? I don't know. It's a waste of time and it's stupid. But actually, this person that I was arguing with is kind of like an online friend, and they're kind of philosophical like I am. So we kind of just talk about random shit and like just argue with each other for no purpose, really. But it actually does serve a purpose for me because she kind of keeps me on my feet in a way. Like, she asks me these questions on objectivism and Ayn Rand and just views on life in general. And if I don't know the answer, then I know that I'm fucking up. But usually when she asks me these questions, I always know the answer. So I always know what I'm talking about, and I have a very cohesive understanding of economics or whatever it is that we're talking about. So she helps keep me on my feet, and that I'm not just bullshitting myself. Like, she's like a constant force that keeps me in line. Kind of like how, Robert Greene says in his second law, in his 48 laws of power, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Your enemies keep you on your toes. Your enemies, right, your oppositions in life make you a stronger person. They make you a better thinker, because if you don't defend yourself, you'll get fucked or you'll just look stupid. So anyway, so that's the story. And anyway, so we were having this argument on morality, and I can actually pull up the actual discussion. If it didn't fall too behind, we have these discussions, and then they I don't know. I don't know. Let's see. What did she say? She was like, Kim Jong-un, I think that's how you say it, went to college in Switzerland. He realized he could be a boring nobody outside of North Korea, or he could become the family legacy of dictatorship. Was he being rational for being a dictator? Because when you think about it, if you're selfish, right? Because I was arguing that to be rationally self-interested, it doesn't mean hurting other people. It doesn't mean controlling people. It doesn't mean taking away their individual rights. And then she was like, well, if you're an all-powerful dictator and you can literally tell anybody to do whatever you want them to do and confiscate their resources for your own gain, aren't you working in your rational self-interest? Isn't it rationally self-interested to be a dictator? And I'm like, fuck no, that's bullshit. To be a dictator is not good. To be a dictator it's a curse disguised as a blessing, in a sense, for many reasons. First of all, it's just immoral to have control over people, right? Like, to tell people what to do against their own mind is evil, because you are destroying their ability to flourish in life, because everyone needs to have the freedom to think for themselves. And if you take away that freedom, if you take away their ability to think, you take away their ability to understand reality, to know the facts. And if they can't know the facts, they can't assess their values. They can't figure out a way to achieve their values. They can't figure out if they know they've achieved their values. And if you can't achieve your values, you can't flourish in life, because values are what allow you to flourish. Values are things like food, water, happiness, relationships, sex, whatever it is, whatever value you have. And so ruling over people is bad. Now, but she's saying it's in your rational self-interest. So I'm like contradicting myself. I'm saying it's immoral to rule over people, yet you're saying to be rationally self-interested. So you should rule over other people. And I'm saying that's bad, because the thing is, when you rule over people and because you destroy their quality of life, they can't they're kind of like slaves, and they're kind of just, they become useless people. They become useless to you in a sense. Because the thing is, when people are free to flourish in life, and when you have capitalism and everybody trades with each other, they're able to innovate, they're able to invent and create new things. Everybody helps each other, including you. So even though you're not ruling over people, what ends up happening is that they benefit you extremely, like a lot more. For example, if we had a dictatorship since like forever, Steve Jobs would have never have come about. Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla would have never invented electricity, right? Because the dictator would have taken all of their resources and would have forbid them to use their own mind and to think freely. He would have just not let them pursue and develop wealth for themselves to invent new things. But because we have freedom and because we let them invent and build what they wanted to build, they were able to invent electricity. And so not only did that help everybody, but it especially helped you. It would especially help you as an ex-dictator because you would have electricity. To be a dictator with no electricity makes you way worse off than to be a free human being with electricity. And it's the same with Steve Jobs and the iPhone. Are you better off controlling people and not having an iPhone or a Mac computer or a Microsoft computer, whatever brand you identify with? Or would you be better off as a free human being with a Microsoft computer or a Mac computer and an iPhone to yourself, right? Like, it's pretty obvious it would be better to have a Mac computer for yourself. And not only that, but everyone else has a Mac computer and an iPhone for themselves. And because of that, everyone is like exponentially more productive, which means they're more likely to invent and create new things. So it's this spiral, it's this upward spiral of exponential growth rather than under a dictatorship where you just have stagnation in the economy. And honestly, you actually have decay. So ruling over people is bad for you materially, even though it doesn't look like it. You have to think long term and you have to think long term. So that's the first reason. The second reason is that to be a dictator, you have to be if you take any dictator like Stalin, Hitler, I don't think they lived very good lives. Stalin was incredibly paranoid and he couldn't trust anybody. And I think he died from a heart attack because the people around him just let him die because he was just a terrible person. I don't know. I could be wrong. I might have to do my research again. But the point is, I don't think people really like Stalin. And so he was very paranoid and extremely worried about getting poisoned. He had a responsibility over a country that he couldn't be responsible over, right? Like a command economy ruled by an elite or one person is always going to fail because you cannot make decisions for everyone economically. Like, it's just impossible. Like, that's one of the worst things about communism and socialism is that the people in charge think that they can create the best system with their own thinking, but they don't realize that in a free economy, everybody's thinking and everyone is responsible for themselves. So the responsibility is easy to handle. But if you're an individual commanding the economy yourself, it's going to be impossible to make all of those interactions that benefit everybody because you're one human. It's impossible to help an economy grow when you're just one person making all the interactions for everybody. And on top of that, when you have that much power over people, you just make stupid decisions. And it's a responsibility that no one can aspire to. You have too much power and control over people, and you're just going to fuck it up every time. And, Hitler killed himself. And, I think he was very passionate about Germany, and I think he really wanted to see Germany flourish. But as a dictator, you can't have a country flourish, because you are just don't have the power or the ability to help a country flourish. So you're going to feel terrible about yourself if you have a conscience. That you're not going to be able to meet the expectations of running a country properly. So yeah, you're not going to be able to run a country properly. What else was I going to say? So yeah, ruling over people is not a good thing to do. And and then after, she said something like, what did she say? She said that the most moral people are always the people that suffer, and evil people always gain or are always winning. And there's something very wrong about that, and that actually made me really angry, because it's wrong. Because to be moral doesn't mean suffering and dying. And it makes sense why she thinks that the most moral people suffer. It's because she believes that the proper morality means to suffer and die. It means to give up your resources. It means to be a Mother Teresa. It means to help people at the expense of yourself. So it's no wonder that good people suffer, because they're not doing anything in their rational self-interest. And it's no wonder that rationally self-interested people actually do better, because they're actually caring about themselves, because Steve Jobs is actually doing something that benefits his life, and he's not just sacrificing his life to whatever. So where was I going with this? And she also conflates evil people with being rationally self-interested. Like when you think about like Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or some evil dictator, like I said, they're really not living in their rational self-interest, right? Because you have a responsibility that you can never achieve, that you can never live up to. And you're screwing yourself over because you're screwing over other people. If you don't help people, and this is why you don't just sacrifice yourself and expect nothing in return. This is why you trade. This is why capitalism is moral, because you're trading your resources for someone else's resources. And after that trade, both of you are better off, because both of you have something that both of you want. So anyway, so that was morality. And I think we talked about something else, but basically, ultimately, what I got from that conversation was that virtues, or, your judgment day doesn't exist. Right? Like, it's funny because people think like at the end of my life, I'm going to be judged on how good I did, like with heaven or hell. If you were a good person, you go to heaven, and if you were a bad person, you go to hell. And obviously that's not true, because those places don't exist. But in many ways it kind of does exist on a tangible level, because when you look back on your life, if you were a virtuous person, right? If you were rationally self-interested, right? If you were rational, if you had integrity, if you had honesty, if you were productive, if you had pride and self-esteem, if you had, honesty? I think that was the last virtue. If you practice those virtues consistently, then you would look back on your life and be pleased with yourself, and that the final judgment would be a positive judgment. But if you didn't practice those judgments, if you didn't practice those virtues, you would be in a shitty position. Because you look back on your life and you think, oh my gosh, I did all of these terrible things. Because the thing is, if you were a good person for your life, then you end up in a good position. If you were a bad person for your life, you end up in a shitty position. So your virtues determine your life, and they determine it so much that your virtues Judgment Day is every day. Your life is what it is, right? Your punishment or your reward is what you get today. So if you're living an average life, it's because you're living to average virtues. You're only practicing virtues half of the time. So you only get half rewards and half punishments. So your life is kind of this mediocre mud of good and bad, right? There's nothing truly great about your life, but it's not terrible that you're like in jail or you're like, you know, rotting away alone because no one cares about you. You're just in the middle. And Aristotle had a really great quote. What was it? He said, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit." So excellence is a habit, and it's the same with your life. You don't do one good deed and then all of your sins are quenched away, are gone forever. Your virtues accumulate, and you're constantly being tested on your virtues. Every second of every day is a choice to be virtuous or viceful. Like right now, what you're choosing to do is a vice or a virtue. And so, I mean, this means a few things. First of all, people are not black and white. It also means that people have free will and that we choose our morality and ultimately we choose our lives. And a lot of people don't like that, but that is your judgment day, is that the day that you have now, how good or bad it is determined by how consistently or how much of a habit you practice your virtues. If you practice your virtues every day, if you make it a habit to choose good over evil every second of every day, then your life at that moment is going to be a positive net worth for that moment. And it could easily change as time progresses because you could do a bunch of vices and you could destroy the quality of your life. And so I just want to make this point that every day is judgment day. Every day is a new day. Right? Every day is a blank slate. Every day is a new chance to move your life in a positive or a negative position. So what I'm trying to say is that like evil people don't do better. Evil people suffer in the world because if you lie, if you steal and you cheat, right? You're being judged every day. It's like, oh, I did a bad thing today. And then the next day you did a bad thing. And if you keep doing bad things every day, eventually at one point, you're not going to have anything to show for it. And you will not be at a good point in life. And so if you take someone like Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, I think they're a mixed bag, because Donald Trump created a lot of wealth, but so he has a lot of virtues, but he has a lot of vices. He lies. He, I don't know everything about him, but the point is he probably doesn't have a super great life, but he probably doesn't have a terrible life either. It's kind of in the middle. And I feel like that's how most people are. Most people are kind of gray. There's not like this black and white, super good person, super bad person. It's only when you do something really terrible, like you murder someone and it kind of wipes out all of your virtues, because that vice is so powerful. And if you do one super good virtue, it can wipe out a lot of your other vices. But again, it's not this one time, one moment, right? It's a constant building and taking away. Like every day is a new chance to practice virtues.